Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Manga Man here. Today we're talking about One Piece chapter 1002. Now I did see the raw scanlations for this yesterday, but as with everything else going on in and around Shueisha, these seem to have been delayed to Fridays. And now I'm recording this at 11 a.m. on a Friday morning. That being said, interesting chapter. Please expect delays or with Black Clover. It will be a 2 video chapter as well as eventually solo leveling. That being said, let's get into the review. So the nuts and bolts of this chapter, but before starting anything else, brilliant combat chapter. A good sign of a good chapter is when you feel like it was a bit short, even though to be fair it was relatively big. It just felt that because I just was like engrossed in the situation. And there's a few things that I do want to touch on, but we'll go through the events of the actual chapter, and then we'll kind of go from there. So this, to be fair, is a fight between two Yonko and the new generation, and it says that as the title. Now, bearing in mind, it's really a Kaidou fight versus the new generation, and Big Mom is pitching in, but she's actually doing something for once. She's showing that she's dangerous. Now, if you kind of look at the chain of events that essentially happens, Kaidou does an attack. It basically, the only person it really hits is Kid, and he's like, I'm all metal really anyway. I don't really care. What's interesting is Zoro basically essentially blocks his attack with his sword. He doesn't really necessarily move. And the fight carries on. At which point we then see attacks from the new generation, which include a rifle from which is a new move from, or an upgraded move from Luffy. We then see essentially a suplex from Kid, and then a scythe attack from Killer. We also see the Gamma knife as well, and we essentially get this statement from both sides. One from Kaidou saying that they can get past his durability, which to be fair is fine, and two from Killer as well, saying that we had trouble with his durability before, but he can get inside. What I found interesting in this was Law's basically like, I've never really dissected a dragon before, but I'm sure you're hard to write about. And then he does his gamma knife, which I found funny because he's basically playing surgeon in the middle of a battlefield. Then we basically get a little interaction between well, first of all, Big Mom attacks Killer, taking him out of the equation with an Indra attack, I believe it was. And it takes him out of the equation. She basically states that, listen, when my clouds are up and the sky's like this, no one's escaping my attacks. So this is where she's actively getting involved in the fight, because they're proving to be more difficult than they anticipated. They've been surprised here. And it's that gap between where they actually are and where people estimate them to be at is where they're going to essentially have the potential to catch people off guard, surprise them, potentially grow, and widen that gap. That being said, there's an interaction now between Zoro and Law, and he's like, look, I need some help here, and essentially Law whinges and says, look, I'm not a babysitter, but he does it anyway, which is basically he's one of those stroppy teenagers. It just makes me laugh. He basically gets Zoro up there, I'm assuming via the shambles, and Zoro basically cuts through the next attack of Kaidou, which is his fire attack. Again, doing the same thing that he did last time by cutting fire. He's now the new Foxfire. He then goes to set up an attack, which seems to be the same one that he did against, I believe, the dragon in... I can't remember. Punk Hazard, sorry. But it's noticed by Big Mom that there's something different about that sword. Dodge, and Kaidou dodges, Zoro misses, and it cuts the horn off the skull of Onigashima, and then he gets zapped by Big Mom. Then there's another attack by Big Mom, which is meant to attack everyone, and she calls it Shiva. And Luffy's fine, and she's like, why are you fine? Because I'm made out of rubber. And then what's interesting is that Kaidou does an attack and Luffy tanks it, and he goes, does fire not work on you as well? And he goes, no, this is just guts. And I thought, okay, Pikachu, calm down. Because he's a rubber man, so you can understand why lightning doesn't work, but now fire doesn't work either. And then Luffy does his attack at the end, and that's how the chapter pretty much ends. So, I mean, there's probably tidbits that I missed in all of that, but that's a quick summary of the chapter. But the things that I've kind of taken from this, number one, Big Mom being involved is good, because ultimately she gives us something to do. Number two, it shows that it's not as easy as Kaidou thought. Unfortunately, it is kind of it's a low-key kind of an arsehole, really, because they've kind of developed so quickly. Now you can understand with Luffy and Zoro, because Enma, Haki training, you know, the main characters, rapid rate of growth, you can understand that. But like Law and Kid and Killer coming out of nowhere, and you know, all of a sudden becoming this strong, we don't know what's going on there. But that being said, it's essentially it's always about the old guard being replaced by the new guard, the new potential of the new generation replacing the old generation. So that's interesting in itself. Another thing to bear in mind here is Zoro's attack can be looked at two ways. Number one, it could say, look, he's powerful, obviously, but he was scared of the attack, and that's why he dodged. That's one thing where you can look at it. The other way you can look at it is there was something that Big Mom noticed about the sword, radiating from the sword, that caused her to be cautious rather than scared, and Kaidou, trusting that, being that they've been in the trenches together, dodged. That doesn't necessarily mean that Zoro is all powerful right now. It basically means there was something off-putting about that sword enough for them to be scared. And it's mentioned that Kaidou even says that, look, why is Odin essentially radiating from that sword? So how much of his power is in that sword? How long did he use it for? You know, part of his soul is in that sword. Is that what it takes to make that a black sword? I don't know. Would it have been a black sword now if Odin had lived? How strong would Odin be? There's many questions you can speculate. But the fact that he's a bit worried and concerned about the sword may be something that's going to come back to haunt them later on. Namely because of Big Mom's attack names. Indra, Shiva, they're all deities that you can see them in a lot of Indian, Asian kind of history and Sanskrit and stuff like this. And the fact that we haven't seen Ashura in a while leads me to believe if you've got Indra and Shiva, you should get an Ashura soon as well. So I'm hoping that we're going to see that very soon. And maybe this is the first time we see Ashura in the new world. I'm hoping he doesn't need to, but it's just something that is because they mentioned the other two. It could be red herrings, but it's something that I'm looking forward to. Now, the next thing I want to touch on before we kind of wrap this up is the fact that Luffy tanked and attacked. I mean, the first attack is understandable with him being no different than Enel's, which is Big Mom's attack, being Rubberman. Fire was interesting because he took it like a man, which this makes sense. When you think about it, in those previous chapters, when Luffy was getting the advanced Haki training, it helps your offense and your defense. And he's developed a body when he was not using his devil fruit powers while being in the cell and pumped himself up. He was naturally athletic, he's been training as a kid, and now he's doing some heavy lifting in prison. He's become hench, as a lot of people do when they go to prison. That being said, so having a stronger natural base body on top of having stronger Haki has all doubled up to him essentially being like the Big Mom type of character, where essentially he's going to be a walking tank. What's important to consider in this scenario though is Big Mom's like in her 60s, I think, at this stage. So she's had easily 40, 50 years to develop her Haki and develop this ability. So with Luffy being able to develop something that's comparable is interesting. It just speaks volumes about his rate of growth. However, it's still going to be a while before he gets to them levels of durability through Haki alone, and not body and not devil fruit and so on and so forth. That being said, exciting chapter. I'm looking to see what's going to happen next with Killer and kind of Zoro out of the equation. I could see them doing a sneak attack somewhere at some point. But I'm looking forward to what Zoro's going to do next. Is he going to pull out more of Odin's Ryu in from that sword? Is he going to pump his Ryu into that? Are we going to see Ashura anytime soon? We'll have to wait and see. As always, like, comment, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.